Majyūō, King of Demons, is an action platformer published by KSS and was released on the Super Famicom in Japan. Sadly, this game was never released outside of Japan, and it's a shame because this title is a pretty neat one. So, let's dive in and see what all King of Demons has to offer. The game starts off with the main character Abel being confronted by his friend Bayer. Bayer tells him that he's just sacrificed Abel's wife and child in order to become all-powerful. He then seemingly kills Abel, but almost immediately Abel is resurrected and given a second chance to try and save his daughter from hell. Abel has some cool tricks up his sleeve, like using a gun with unlimited ammo, the ability to charge up a heavy damage shot, jump twice in a row, and he can also dodge roll left and right. He has a kick that he can do from a jump, but it wasn't the most practical move, so I didn't really ever use it. He can't shoot and walk forward at the same time, and that can be slightly awkward, but I found that I got used to it rather quickly by jumping forward and shooting. Another thing is there's no invincibility during dodge rolls, so those need to be done with precise timing. Right after Bayer runs off, Abel also receives help from his wife, where she turns into some kind of fairy that can help do extra damage by fighting enemies Abel shoots at. If Abel's health gets depleted while she is with him, she will sacrifice herself and refill his health. This is actually kind of cool because it made me work to try to keep her around. There are a few of these power-ups found throughout the game. After getting through a few short stages, Abel fights a boss that will drop a stone after they are defeated that can be hit and absorbed under a choice of 3 colors: red, green, and blue. All of these colors change how Abel plays in the following stage. He will change into a different type of demon for each type of color. They all have different movement speeds, dodges, and attacks. If the same demon is used for multiple stages, then they will get an upgrade in strength. If all 3 of the forms are used, an ultimate form is made available. I know I should have, but I actually didn't try this form yet, even though I finished the game a couple times. The graphics in Majyuuou remind me of games like Castlevania Bloodlines and Wings of War for the Sega Genesis much more than a Super Famicom title. The sprites for Abel and most of the enemies are much smaller than what I'm used to, except for some of the bosses. Those range from medium-sized to downright huge. The game is also really dark in tone with demons everywhere and lots of strange creatures that need destroying along the way. The game runs smoothly for the most part, with the exception of some random slowdown here and there when a lot is going on, and when some of the big bosses are on screen that I mentioned before. The sound in the game is pretty lackluster, and some of the choices for attack sounds are downright grating on the ears. Most of the other sounds aren't too bad though, but it doesn't really match up with the great sounds usually found on the Super Famicom. And I also didn't find the music to be super fitting for the tone of a lot of the bosses and stages. I imagined much darker and ominous song choices, but there are some more upbeat songs that just seemed odd. It's hard to explain, but they don't really fit in my opinion. So let's talk about enemies, bosses, and difficulty. There is an okay variety when it comes to enemies from stage to stage, and they all fit the different levels. Stages range in everything from a jungle to fire and ice locations. Enemy locations are set up well for the most part, and every stage has several mini-bosses that range from easy as piss to downright annoying until you get down their attack patterns. Defeating enemies will cause Abel to level up and gain more health over time. He will need it too, because he can be destroyed in later sections of the game in just a few hits. If all lives are lost and a game over happens, then he resets it back to his tiny little life bar. This can be a huge pain in the ass in the final stages of the game, so memorizing the enemy locations and boss patterns is the only way to win. Another issue is that health doesn't refill between stages, and pretty much the only ways to refill health are by little blue spheres that you can pick up, or by losing a life. So this game can be a bit tough at times. If you're used to retro action platformers, then this game should take only about 2 hours or so to get through the first time. There are unlimited continues, so that will help cut down on the frustration a little bit. So overall, do I recommend Majyuuou? Well, if you enjoy 16-bit platformer games, then you'll probably get some enjoyment out of this very rare title. Buying an original Japanese copy of the game is pretty much out of the question, unless you want to drop several $100s on just the card alone. If you want a complete copy with the box, you're looking at over $1,000. I can't even recommend anyone paying those types of prices for this game, but it had a re-release in 2018 that can be found for a much more reasonable price of around $60 US. If you can get the game in some way, then I recommend snagging it, because it can be a fun little dark ride through hell.